Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Reddit ProRevenge. I've got 3 stories for you in this one, with the last one being a pretty long one. You'll hear about how someone's life was ruined over $120, how one kid took down his bully in an unexpected way, and to finish it off, some good old-fashioned cheating revenge. I hope you stay for all the stories, and subscribe for future videos. Some people need to learn the hard way. This story's titled, "It was a Little League football game. It didn't have to end like this." When I was in 10th grade, I got into refereeing football for a little league in town. I got hired by a random booster club mom, and she tells me that they pay us in cash, out of the snack cart money. So the owner of the league, we'll call him D from here, was generally a nice guy and had a son on the team. D was the guy living off his failed childhood through his 9-year-old kid. The season was going great, except when I had to referee his games. He would get mad at any call involving his son, no matter what happened. If this kid was on the line and went off sides, we were expected not to call it. Well, I like to make things as fair as possible for the kids, so I would always call it. This would set him off, and he would come running from the sidelines, yelling at me. I tried to talk to him multiple times, but his reply was always the same. It's my league, so it's my rules. So I moved on and just kept doing me. The season was winding down, and his kid's team happened to make it to the championship. The head coaches get to choose one referee each. D chose Doug. Doug's cool. I like Doug. And the other coach chose me. D calls me midweek, telling me there's gonna be an NFL rep there to do the coin toss and evaluating the league for a sponsorship. Annoyed with his mid-game disruptions, I decided to have some petty revenge. On the day of the game, I show up and just act like always. Got everything set up, then called out the captains. Out comes D with his son, and the other coach and his captain. We get everything started, and at first, I let the little things go. I feel giddy, but I know I have to let the kid win a bit, so he really feels the burn. The score was tied with 4 minutes left, when I saw an opportunity to strike. It was 4th down on their own 15. D's son was at quarterback, and instead of taking a snap from the center, he said hike and picked up the ball. Normally, I would let this go, but it was D's kid, so I tossed my flag. Expecting a 5 to 10 yard run, you can imagine I was a bit surprised when he took it all the way for an 85-yard touchdown. Everyone on their sidelines is going crazy, including D, when the other coach starts yelling, "Hold up, flag, there's a flag." I call a meeting on the middle of the field and explained what happened. D wasn't having it. He was staying surprisingly calm, and he said I could either declare a touchdown or take off my uniform. So fuck it, I quit. I'm waiting for the booster lady to pay me when she gets a call and says, "D told me not to pay you." I waited until D was available and had it out with him. When he makes it clear that I was paid under the table and that I could basically go get fucked. Time for some serious fucking revenge. I talked to the NFL rep on the way out and tell him what's going on, and he seemed a little pissed off. Then, I went ahead and gave the call to the IRS and gave them all the information that I had. I forgot all about it for a few weeks. Then, I got a call from Doug asking if I was the one that called him in and explained that D had 6 other businesses that had a lot of under-table dealings. He ends the call by saying, "That was pretty fucked up. It was just a little league football game. It didn't have to end like this." D had a multi-million-dollar house, 2 nice cars, and a loving family, and $120 screwed him out of it all. If you hate someone, be nice to their friends, and then ruin them. This story's titled, "Don't Let Your Enemy Be a Friend of Your Friends." So I was flicking through Facebook when I remembered something that I did to someone in secondary school. Details are a little hazy, but here goes. Back in school, I was several things. Awkward and weird in the extreme. Bit of a runt. Physically weak. Now, I had the fortune to go to one of the grammar schools in the UK, so for the most part, nothing happened. But one person who I do remember sticks out. I'll call him AH, short for arsehole. Quite possibly the meanest bully I've ever had. He was always trying something against me, and as a result, I spent a lot of time in the library, or with teachers. After all, I was sick of him constantly trying to trip me or try to steal my things, or, most annoyingly of all, trying to copy my work. I took great pride in my success. I tried not to let it show, but every once in a while, I would eventually break down. This persisted for the first 2 years. He always acted alone, perhaps because he was trying not to look like an arsehole in front of everyone else. Anyhow, after those 2 years, AH decided to shove me in a locker. Now I'm claustrophobic, and he knew that. And when I was trying to frantically resist, he left me with a broken nose. I was locked inside and was only let out when a teacher heard my pathetic sobs and pleas for help. He was suspended for a week. I spent some time in the medical room, and a week later, it was all resolved. Except for the resentment that I had. Not cool. The teachers were off the ball and doing nothing to protect me. I wanted this guy to suffer. I eventually got my chance. In mathematics, I was one of the best in the class. One of his friends was sorely struggling. Now, I wasn't the most socially adept person, but I knew my maths. When he ended up sitting next to me, I helped him out. Gave him pointers. His grades began to improve. He started helping me out with things like art. I didn't really improve much, but we forged an unlikely friendship. Anyhow, the compound effect of this was twofold. Not only had I gained some protection from AH, but I also entered his extended group of friends, and this friend that I made started dragging me along to hang out with them during break periods. Within 6 months, I was friends with all of AH's friends. I always acted friendly around AH, never brought up anything at all. His friends were nice guys, treated me real good. I eventually suggested setting up a study group in the library, offered to arrange them. I asked about when everyone was available, and I always had things to do when AH was available. How inconvenient. As such, although he was invited, I made sure he wasn't there. Suffice to say, due to us studying together once a week, our grades in our weaker subjects started to improve. As for AH, he hadn't put much work into his own success. Without his friends to mooch from, his grades started tanking. Suddenly, he was being really nice to me, trying to apologize to me in private so he wouldn't lose face in front of his friends. I told him my answer simply. This is the only exact phrase that I remember. I said, "You want to apologize? You apologize to me in front of your friends." This was now 8 months into the school locker incident. He told me that he would apologize. Okay, cool. I arranged the study group. This time, he could make it, and he gave his apology to me in front of his friends. I asked if he was doing this just for grades. After all, his friends knew that his grades were tanking, and ours were on the rise. Cue my friends flipping out, asking him very pointed questions about what had happened. In that moment, I'd cut off AH from his friends and taken them as my own. His former friends were quick to ostracize him. I breezed through the rest of grammar school. We went our separate ways at college, took different subjects, and the group disbanded. Why was I reminded? Despite not talking to any of these guys in almost a decade, I found AH on Facebook, and it asked if I knew him. I had a quick look on his profile, very few friends, and working a deadbeat job at 26 as a cashier, and no one from my old study group was a friend of his. What would you do if you found out that your wife was cheating on you, not with one, but multiple other men? This story's titled, Not Your Meal Ticket. Well, this story starts out like quite a few others I have. Being in the US Army, became attracted to a woman whom I ended up marrying. At first, she's all I could ever ask for in a woman. Sweet, caring, one hell of a cuddler. Doesn't really like the video games like I do, but makes an effort to get into them so we can spend time together doing something that we both enjoy. Let's call her Thunder Cunt, for reasons you will soon know. I met TC through one of the other soldiers that I worked with, who we will call BB, Battle Buddy, since he was not at fault in this. It was in the middle of the week, and I had just gotten a work order finished up, and was taking a quick break for a drink of water. I heard BB asking a few other soldiers if they were open for a date for this upcoming weekend. Now, I knew from a few other friends that Battle Buddy was straight, so I was curious to why he was asking. Long story short, Battle Buddy had a female friend who was looking for a date for a movie that coming weekend. I offered to go with his friend, and she and I hit it off rather well and continued to see each other. Months pass. It hasn't been enough time for me to consider marriage yet, but she has some spontaneous ailments, seizures, and they were legit, spring up out of nowhere. Since these only seemed to happen in her sleep, and my command wouldn't let me stay off post with her without being married. Light bulb. We got a courtroom wedding 2 weeks later. The added bonus? Not only could I stay with her while she slept to be ready in case of another episode, but my TRICARE would fully cover her medical cost. I was happy. She was happy. I got to tell my command, now you can't stop me from staying with her, and we all lived happily ever after. Except that we didn't. Things went well for a while, as I described at the beginning of the post, but after a bit, I started noticing things. Things like her needing to take her mother to the doctor's office quite frequently. Her mother was sickly, so I didn't think much of it at first. Or needing to head to the Walmart one town over, because the one in our town didn't have what she needed in stock. Also, things like the car I bought and let her use, seen parked in a lot next to several different trailer parks in a month. Well, as luck would have it, right as I started to get suspicious, I came down on orders to PCS to Korea. So sidelining the investigation until I was able to continue, I packed, kissed my wife goodbye, and let the army send me where they wanted me. I spent a year in Korea, then came down on orders for Texas. I went there. It was there that I found exactly what was going on, courtesy of her mom, brother, and her aunt and uncle. This woman was sleeping with 60, not even kidding in the slightest, different men, most of them soldiers. Her excuse to her family was, Frizzmaster's gay and he doesn't want to come out, so he's pointing out the men that I can sleep with, since he knows that they're clean. So basically, this woman is using me as a paycheck and a meal ticket, and screwing everything with a pulse that happens to be male. The icing on the cake is that 2 weeks after I got the good news, she calls me and confesses to cheating on me. Once. The only reason that she confessed, she was pregnant, and there was no way that I could be the father, given that I was in a different state at the time, and the father was African American. I am very much not African American, having been called neon white on more than one occasion due to my Irish ancestry. So, there was no possible way that this child would look like me at all. So my wife felt the need to break the news to me before she had the baby, because she could no longer hide it. Well, things happened. I went back home without her knowing, and removed my belongings from the house that I bought to keep her from selling them once she realized what I was about to do, and started divorce proceedings. This is revenge number 1. I saw her boyfriend, not the baby's father, new guy entirely, driving my car. So, I enlisted the help of her aunt and uncle to get my car back. They pulled up behind him in a parking lot, got out and talked to him normally, at which time I walked up from the other side of the parking lot. Her uncle asked to see the keys, and upon receiving them, began taking the car key off from the ring, and he waved me forward. I walked up, took the car key from him, looked at the guy and said, "Hi, my name's Frizzmaster, and this is my car. I'm taking it now." I waved him over to the sidewalk, removed everything from the car that didn't have my name on it, left the items with him, then got in my car and drove off. I found out later that day that he had packed everything and left her. Apparently, he had been living in my house, eating my food, sleeping in my bed, and wearing my clothes. Plus, she had been using the money that I sent her every month to pay for his court costs and child support costs. Well, months went by and our court date came up, and my lawyer recommended that I file for sole use of the vehicle and the property, since it was obvious that she had committed adultery and didn't have a leg to stand on. We go to court, she counterfiles for the exact same, and since she refused to release the results of a paternity test, I get stonewalled. The exact words used by the judge were, "I'm sorry, but without proof of the paternity of the child, I cannot, in good conscience, approve either of these motions." So we set a new date for a private hearing with the judge, and we wait. Nearly 3 months go by, and the court date was finally near. I walked into the courthouse, met up with my lawyer, who had a demonic glint in his eye at the time, went into the courtroom, and waited. 20 minutes later, she walked in, shot me a dirty look, which I did my best to ignore, and sat down. The judge came in 5 minutes later, the court was called to order, and the divorce trial commenced. Here, I found out just what had given my lawyer the twinkle in his eye earlier on. He proceeded to ask TC a series of questions, including 1. Is my client the father of your child? 2. When was the child conceived? 3. Where was my client during the time at which your child was conceived? 4. Do you know who the father of your child is? 5. Have you received child support from the father of your child? Basically, he questioned her into a legal corner, in which she either had to answer truthfully or lie and suffer the legal ramifications to perjury in the face of easily provable evidence. She answered truthfully, luckily for her, and the court case continued. She presented her argument, littered with dirt that she was trying to throw on me. Insults my person, questions about my sexual orientation, and claims that I was having a relationship with her 18-year-old cousin. I, falling back on my military training, simply sat up straight, folded my hands in front of me on the table, and stared at a spot on the wall, slightly above the judge's left shoulder. I answered every question asked of me, offered no personal opinions, threw no dirt, and refused to sink to her level and question her sexuality. Subsequently, she had a more and more confused look on her face as I refrained from badmouthing her like she was doing me, and the divorce trial went by rather fast. At the conclusion of the trial, the judge looked over at the paperwork submitted one last time, then looked to the both of us and said, "Are there any closing remarks or claims that need to be made?" TC made one last parting swipe about me, currently living with her aunt and uncle, and I merely shook my head and resumed staring at the wall. The judge took one last look of the papers, set them down, and spoke the greatest words I've ever heard in my life. He said, "Well, looking over the evidence and testimonies presented, there is really only one decision that I can come to. Mr. Frizzmaster, I'm approving your motions for exclusive use of your vehicle and property upon undeniable evidence of adultery. Mrs. Frizzmaster, the only one of your motions that I'm granting today is your legal request for a no-contact order, and that's more for Mr. Frizzmaster's benefit than your own. You seemed very combative and willing to cause him legal damage that he was not due, and your repeated attempts to overtalk me while I was reviewing the paperwork did not speak well of you. You no longer have a claim to either the property or the vehicle, and will not contact Mr. Frizzmaster unless it is to have him clarify which items do not belong to you." TC had the audacity to work up a sniffle and asked the judge, But where do I go? What do I do for a place to live?" The judge looked back at her and replied, "Well, Mrs. Frizzmaster, you have 30 days to figure that out, after which you will not set foot on that property again, or else you'll be held in contempt of court." Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into this episode of Reddit ProRevenge. If you like the stories, hit that thumbs up button and leave a comment, letting me know your thoughts. If you aren't subscribed, I'll show you what to do with this animation. Also, if you want to talk to me or submit stories, join my Discord server. See you guys in the next one.